What is your ham radio lifestyle? Section 1.5 of the ARRL Handbook for 2021. We're going to talk about it right now. Hey guys, my name is Jason. I'm KC5HWB, and I want to thank the ARRL for this privilege of allowing me to review one little section of the handbook. Hopefully you came here from Hayden's video, VK7HH, where he discusses antennas and band plans for the ARRL in another section of the handbook. So if you missed that, be sure to go back and look at that video after you're done with this one. But a special thanks to Steve, K5ATA, and all the folks at the ARRL that are allowing me to talk to you today about your ham radio lifestyle. Your ham radio lifestyle is basically a set of activities you can do after receiving your ham radio license. A lot of people ask me on my channel, they're like, okay, so we get our ham radio license, and then what is there to do? And I'm like, there's a lot to do. It's not like you get your ham license and have to go do one thing and one thing only. There's actually a plethora of items and activities and facets to do inside of amateur radio. We're going to talk about just a few of them today. The first one, of course, is radio sport and contesting. Now, contesting is basically the act of getting on the air at a certain date and time and trying to make contacts with as many other ham radio operators as you can. Some contests include trying to get a number of prefixes on the air, like my prefix is KC5, someone else is KD5 and KA5 and W5 and N5. And all of these different prefixes, you try to get as many as you can in your logbook. Other contests have you trying to contact as many different countries outside of the USA as you can. Other contests have just a number of contacts from anywhere and everywhere. It could be anything. So contesting is a very big part of amateur radio today. And a lot of people really enjoy contesting. In fact, there's hardly a weekend goes by where there's not some sort of contest somewhere, be it a regional contest in a specific state, like a Texas QSO party or a Missouri QSO party, or be it a nationwide, something in North America contest, or a worldwide contest, even contests overseas in Europe and in Asia that we might be able to hear on the bands if the bands are up, but sometimes even not. So contesting is very big in amateur radio today. Another thing that is very fun is ARRL Field Day, which takes place the last full weekend of June every year.
Seek your field day, seek your field day, seek your field day. This is Kilowatt November 5, Texas Radio Field Day.
And this is basically an exercise in going out into the field, setting up your portable operations, and making as many contacts as you can. They say it's not a contest, but it's kind of treated like a contest because we do keep score and we do try to compete with others. But really, Field Day, in its essence, in its underlying theme, is a way to go out into the field and practice emergency communications. This is necessary to do after disaster strikes in certain places. Some of the most recent examples I can give you is Hurricane Harvey in the South Texas Gulf Bay area, Hurricane Katrina from a few years back, of course, 9/11, everyone remembers that. But after disasters happen, either man-made or natural disasters in a certain area, communications into and out of that area might be down. Field Day is a way that we can practice going out into the field without shore power, without AC power at home, and setting up radios, portable, solar, maybe with a generator, and practicing our communication abilities with the antennas that we have and with the areas that we have. So, some areas are better than others. If you're up higher, if you're down lower, it's a challenge no matter where you go. So Field Day is a good opportunity to practice an emergency communication portable setup. And since they do keep points and you try to contact as many people as you can, it's a fun way to get a taste of what contesting is kind of like as well. There's a lot of guys out there who chase DX. Chasing DX. DX is an acronym for distance.
Okay, Mark, very good. Yeah, you're about a 5 and 5 there in the peaks, so lots of QSB, but got you nice here into Costa Rica. Thank you for stopping by. Name here is Chris.
So when you make a DX contact, generally speaking, you're talking about contacting another ham operator outside of the USA. If you live in Chile or in Honduras, then you're talking about contacting another ham radio operator outside of your home country. So DX is usually a distance contact, and it's done by a lot of ham radio operators outside of contest weekends and just kind of at random whenever they feel like sitting down in front of the radio. They'll call CQDX. They'll try to work as many countries as they can. You can gain awards for working DX, like DXCC, which is the DX Century Club. This is an award you receive after working 100 different DX entities. Again, a DX entity, most of the time for you and I, is going to be anybody outside of the United States of America. This can include Canada, Mexico, all of South America, Asia, Europe, a number of islands, Antarctica, all kinds of places, as long as it's outside of the USA. Some people even consider Hawaii and Alaska DX. While that's a topic of debate, I'll put it that way. Anything outside of the 50 states of the United States is certainly considered a DX contact. And people chase awards and commemorative certificates for contacting as many of these as they can. DXpeditions are also very popular. I've myself been on a DXpedition to Costa Rica 4 times.
Yep, that's it. Yourself.
Okay. Roger, Roger. November 5, Bravo Golf Papa, about a 5x2 into Costa Rica this morning.
Roger, that's 5-1 in Northwest Arkansas.
And when you are the DX on the other end of the radio that people want to contact, it's very fun to work a pileup. And a pileup of just a plethora of stations trying to all contact you at once and get you in their logbook with that DX call sign that you're working. It can be a fun way to operate ham radio in today's world. Some more operating awards besides DXCC is Worked All Continents and Worked All States. Here in the United States, the ARRL sponsors a 24/7 effort called Worked All States, where I live in Texas, so if I contact one station and can get a reciprocating contact, in other words, they log me and I log them, on all 50 states, I'll get a plaque and award to hang on my wall in my ham shack that says Worked All States. There's one for Worked All Continents, there's one for Worked All Zones, there's one for Worked All Prefixes. That's a tough one right there. But you can do standard operating practices and operating awards outside of DX windows, outside of contest entities, and outside of field day events. So this is a 24/7. You can turn on your radio and work and try to get more logs in your logbook for Worked All States, Worked All Continents, and many more of these anytime you want to. Ham radio in space is a real thing. We have satellites in the air we can use as VHF, UHF repeaters. There's an amateur radio station on the International Space Station that we call ARRISS, A-R-I-S-S, Amateur Radio International Space Station. You can go to ARRISS.org. You can read more about that effort, but sometimes you can actually make contact with the guys on the International Space Station. One of these last launches I was watching, and they were talking about how the 4 astronauts all going into space had amateur radio call signs. So it's very possible to work satellites, work other hams from Earth via a satellite connection used as a repeater, or you can talk directly to the International Space Station as well. Really cool thing to have in your logbook. Some other modes and type of self-challenges you can do is a QRP station, which is a low power. Generally, this is considered if you operate a station with 10 watts or less, you're considered QRP. So you can go out and try to make some summits on the air or parks on the air contacts while operating QRP. Generally speaking, it's a little bit easier to make those contacts with a full-powered 100-watt radio, or even if you bring an amp with you. I've been known to bring amps with me to parks. Don't tell anybody, but I've done it. But a lot of guys just enjoy the challenge of QRP. So QRP is always an exciting area in amateur radio today. And of course, we don't have to do all of our operating or contesting or chasing on the HF bands. There's a lot of guys who do. In fact, there's a VU DXCC, which is a VHF UHF DXCC. It's contacting 100 companies on VHF or higher. So basically, you can work some 2-meter sideband, 220 sideband, 440 sideband, different bands above 50 megahertz. Anything above 30 megahertz is considered VHF. So 30 to 300 megahertz is VHF. Anything from 300 to 3,000 megahertz is considered UHF. So there are a lot of ham operators out there that get on 6 meters around 50 megahertz, 2 meters around 144 megahertz, and they will work stations. They'll do Worked All States. They'll do DXCC. They'll do VU DXCC. So it's not limited to only the HF bands. There's a multitude of different bands that we can use to gain some of these awards, some of these certificates, and some of just this general operating efforts that we all do. Operating mobile is a real thing as well. There's a lot of really great stations out there that have set up in their vehicles. Sometimes they'll do rover activities during contests, which means they drive around from county to county. If it's a QSO party, usually the objective of a state QSO party is to say, I'm going to contact as many counties in this state as I can. So there'll be rovers, guys that set up their mobile stations. They'll drive from county to county. They'll make a dozen or couple dozen contacts in this county. Then they'll drive to the next county. And there's guys that are at home working the QSO party that will chase the rover the whole way because they want as many counties as they can get in their logbook for that QSO party contest. So operating mobile is a real thing. Parks on the Air does a great job because basically the only rule of Parks on the Air is you have to be in the state or national park, so you can have a really great mobile setup, something with a screwdriver antenna, something with a ham stick, something with a 100-watt powered station that runs off of your car battery, even a QRP station in your vehicle. You can pull into the park, make your 10 contacts to operate the park, and move on. You can do multiple parks because you don't have to get out of the vehicle and set up. You can just activate and go. So mobile amateur radio on VHF, UHF, and HF is a real thing today, and a lot of people really enjoy that. Speaking about the lifestyle, there's a huge audience out there that does vintage radio. So they will take radios from the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, and they will restore them, and they will use those to get on the air and talk to other amateur radio operators today. Vintage radio is a real thing. If your father, grandfather, great-grandfather was into ham radio and they still have a radio that they used back in the day, hang on to it. It might be a really cool thing for you to get on the air with one day. A couple of other practices considering around satellites in space is to do moon bounce and meteor scatter. Now, these are two things that I've personally never done before, but I've watched a guy do EME, which is Earth, Moon, Earth. Basically, it's taking your signal and bouncing it off the moon and talking to another station on Earth. So you're standing on Earth, at least most days you are, and you're pointing your antenna at the moon, and you're using the moon as a repeater to bounce a signal off of so that the other station, hundreds of miles away, and you can talk. It's usually kind of a short conversation when that happens. Meteor scatter is the same thing. During a meteor shower, you can use the meteor storm to bounce signals off and do the same type of two-way communication with another Earth station. I've heard guys say they do it with rain scatter. Never tried that one before. There's some really challenging things out there that could be quite rewarding in amateur radio should you find yourself in the right environment and situation to make those types of contacts. It's very fun to put them in the logbook and then tell people about them later. The last thing we'll talk about today is direction finding. So everybody knows what a rogue signal is. One of the most common practices in amateur radio today is direction finding. We have skills and tasks and just certain ways of doing things where we can find out where a rogue or just a broken signal is coming from. If someone's keyed down on a mic by mistake and they don't know their radio's keyed because they can't hear anything coming out of the radio now, they're transmitting without knowing it. We can use direction finding abilities and a couple of tricks here and there to actually find out where that signal is and go knock on that person's door and say, hey, did you know your radio's keyed down? And most of the time they're like, oh, no, I didn't know that. Thank you, because you can burn up a radio by keeping it keyed down too long. So direction finding is a very fun type of event. There's a lot of ham radio clubs in my area that do what they call fox hunts. They'll put a small, very low power transmitter out in the field somewhere, and then they'll run a contest to see who can find it first. And sometimes they give away gift certificates to an amateur radio retailer or something like that, or maybe a Starbucks gift certificate or something like that. So direction finding is very real and used quite regularly in amateur radio today. And it's just another facet of what you can do inside of your ham radio lifestyle after getting licensed. Guys, this is a tip of the iceberg. This was a great section of the ARRL Handbook. Once again, I really appreciate the guys allowing me to record this video and share it with you. But this is tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of stuff to do inside of amateur radio today. And I hope once you get licensed, you'll get on the air and find out just all of the cool stuff you can do inside of ham radio. 73 from KC5 HWB. You guys have a good afternoon.